and welcome to the SourceFuse's Talking Out Cloud, a Friday leadership chat series. My name is Liz Grint, Marketing Manager here at SourceFuse. If you're unfamiliar with SourceFuse, we provide digital transformation solutions and services, transforming the way today's most successful enterprises modernize and migrate to the cloud, using the most advanced cloud technologies and expertise. Modernization-led cloud migration is at the heart of what we do, empowering businesses to scale their applications rapidly and accelerate growth to the cloud. And so today's topic focuses on modernization. As advanced AWS Consulting Partners, I'm thrilled to be joined today by Jason Rook, Global Modernization Program Lead at Amazon Web Services. Welcome, Jason.
Thank you, Liz, and thank you to SourceFuse for having me. This is an exciting series, so I'm looking forward to our conversation today. Thank you.
Lovely. Thanks, Jason. Why don't I start by asking you just to tell us a bit about your own background and experience with Microsoft workloads and modernization at AWS?
Sure. So my name is Jason Rook, and I've been working in the public cloud infrastructure or hyperscaler space since 2010. So I've been at this for a while. I've been with other hyperscalers, and I've also worked with I've also built and operated a consulting firm myself to help customers with their modernization journeys, as it were. For the last 2 years, I've been working at AWS on this mission that we have to help our AWS Consulting Partners really engage with their customers to help their customers with what we call modernization. And Liz and I are going to get into that as we have this dialogue today. But the focus is really on, we have all these great partners across the globe like SourceFuse that are working with customers on modernizing applications or building net new applications on modern architecture. And there's just an incredible opportunity to take the power that AWS brings to those partners and then kind of amplify that out to their customers. So that's my mission today, is to really help folks like SourceFuse work more efficiently or even at a larger scale with their customers.
That's brilliant. Thanks, Jason. Modernization might mean different things to different people. So in your role as the Global Modernization Program Lead, how would you best describe modernization?
That's a great question. So I like to tell people that everyone they work with in the technology space has a modernization pitch today. Your software providers have a pitch, your hardware providers have a pitch, they have a pitch around edge or new devices, or you just hear constantly this noise around modernization, which is probably quite just. At AWS, we've got this kind of Uber philosophy on how we talk about modernization. And that's that we've got this kind of definition that we use. We could say that modernization is basically this process of progressively transforming applications and infrastructure to help customers extend into higher value cloud native services so they can unlock some of the promised new business capabilities of modernization, also accelerate innovation and many times reduce their technical debt. What I think is probably the most interesting about the AWS philosophy around modernization is this kind of term that we use is progressively transforming. So we've got this idea that modernization is not really kind of a milestone on a project plan or an end game. It's constantly happening. If you look at the kind of the services that we develop and launch to market, we're constantly kind of pushing the envelope and progressively helping our customers transform. So that's really kind of our Uber statement around modernization. My particular kind of deeper slice of that modernization definition is really focused on modernizing what we would call Microsoft workloads. So we know there's this incredible footprint of Windows and SQL-based applications out in the ecosystem. Some are living on premises today, some are living already in the cloud. But what we hear from customers is that they're at a point where they want to kind of move away from some of those legacy commercial-based licensing operating systems and databases and capture some of the benefit or utilize some of the new architecture, cloud native, open source, purpose built, those types of things. So that's really kind of my slice of the modernization pitch, if you will, is that I'm focused on helping partners like SourceFuse to really work with those customers that are interested in moving from those Microsoft workloads to cloud native architectures. So that's kind of where I fit in this big never-ending definition of modernization, if you will.
Yeah, that is. I love that Uber philosophy and Uber statement. um, so as I mentioned in my intro, SourceFuse have a lot of experience modernizing legacy applications and migrating them to the cloud. But tell me, Jason, when it comes to Windows workloads, what would you say have been the biggest drivers for modernization in recent years?
So I think what we see from a Windows workload perspective is kind of similar to what we see just whenever anybody talks about modernization. It's this customer kind of drive for, and in no particular order, I would say innovation. So we have customers that are eager to innovate with either bringing new products to market or advancing current products that they have, and that can be software providers or large enterprise IT organizations that need to get new feature functionality, et cetera, to their end users, then eventually to their end customers. We see customers that are kind of going down this path because what I like to call the rise of the developer and the rise of DevOps. And I know SourceFuse is no stranger to that, right? You've got a very strong DevOps practice. So you've been in that game for a while, and you've seen kind of the rise of the developer and the developer kind of leading the pace of innovation at a customer, and then bringing operations along with the developer, and then the two have to work together really well. We see that motion really driving a lot of this innovation and move towards modernization. And kind of coupled with that, I would say skill set is an incredibly important piece of this dialogue, because as customers continue to innovate, embrace concepts like DevOps and really, or SecDevOps, and whatever the next thing is, the skill set thing is super important as well, because there's not a lot of talent in the market. So customers are continuously trying to kind of align their monetization strategy to a place where they think the talent's going to be, or where they can develop the talent, or transition talent, I should say, as well. Then there's also this motion around security footprint. I think there's no doubt that every customer is concerned about kind of their security footprint today. And we see customers modernizing as kind of a motion to get more secure, if you will. So we see a lot of this move from legacy to modern as part of an overall strategy to become more secure. Kind of in lockstep with that, we also see the same shift around performance as well. So today, customers have a very low appetite for applications and systems and tools that don't perform well. And we see that customers are embracing this modernization strategy to address performance, and even to some degree scale, right? Global scale, those types of things. And then finally, I know we talk about it a lot. Everybody talks about it a lot when they talk about modernization, but we do see this just drive for cost reduction, whether that's TCO or removing cost components out of the equation, like licensing components, those types of things. We see that. So if you kind of take all of those concepts and you say, okay, what about my Microsoft workloads? What we see there is we see this interesting push around what I kind of call three pathways, if you will. The first pathway is around application modernization. So we see customers that have invested, and probably rightfully so, in .NET Framework, and they've built great .NET Framework applications that probably want to run on Windows Server and IIS and those types of things. But we see those customers, and they're saying, hey, I've got all these skills around .NET. I know how to build applications, but I really want to get to this point where I can embrace some more modern cloud native architecture, whether that is containers, which some would argue, is that really cloud native or not, but it's probably a good step on the journey. Then there's serverless and microservice architectures that customers want to get to. And those customers are taking a look at the existing skill set, what they know in-house and where they want to go. And they're making the commitment to .NET Core or .NET 6. And which gives them this ability to embrace all of these additional open source tools and cloud native concepts on the other side of that transition. So we see customers in this Microsoft world that are making that shift from .NET Framework to .NET Core / .NET 6 to really kind of do this app modernization pathway. The second pathway that we see a lot is database modernization. So we see customers that are kind of, for a number of different reasons, they're locked into huge commercial licensing contracts around their database. They've purchased big database contracts, but they're only using a sliver of the functionality. They're at a point where it's starting to become, they're using so much kind of commercial database on-prem or even in the cloud to some degree, but it's not scaling to where they want to go. So we see these customers that are in this position today, And what they're doing is they're starting to modernize those databases, and they're taking them a couple different routes. So customers that have I'll just use for example like a Microsoft SQL Server, and they're using it primarily for relational data store. They're taking those with AWS. They're taking those to a product that we have called Amazon Aurora, which is a Postgres SQL based open cloud built database that AWS has built. And we like to say that it runs for about 1/10 of the cost with cloud performance of a commercial grade or commercial based database. So we see customers kind of making that relational shift. We also see those same customers going to other open source databases as well. And all of those have a great place to kind of live and run in the AWS ecosystem. Then we see customers that have that problem with, hey, I've got SQL Server, I'm running it as a data warehouse, and it's getting super expensive, and I'm kind of on or ready to go to my next thing. We see those customers start to explore things like Amazon Redshift, or a number of other third-party tools that run well with Redshift within AWS. So we see them kind of on that database modernization pathway, focus very heavily on what they're going to do with their data warehouse and the footprint, the cost, and hopefully their future ability to scale that data warehouse. Then I'd say the third piece within database modernization is really that customer that did buy a lot of SQL and is only using a sliver of the functionality. And what we see those customers look at from an AWS perspective is that we've got these things that we call purpose-built databases. So DynamoDB, time series, those are some examples you can go out and look at AWS purpose-built databases. But we see those as great landing spots for customers that are only using the SQL or even Oracle to some degree, big licensed databases that they purchased. They only use it as a subset of that functionality, and they're moving to those purpose-built databases with AWS. So that's kind of at a high level what we see with database modernization. Then the third pathway that I kind of see, and I see this very much from my purview getting to work with so many AWS consulting partners, is that we have customers that have built massive, what you might call monolithic applications that include all of those things. They've got .NET applications, they've got SQL-based applications, they're connecting to a mainframe somewhere, and this application has been kind of alive since 2008 probably, right? And they're starting to decouple what that application does. And really what we're seeing AWS Consulting Partners do is help customers take a look at those huge monolithic applications and break them down into this component should go to kind of the app modernization path, this component is database path, we'll modernize it this way. And what they're doing is kind of taking those monolithic applications with some of these same motions that we see to kind of modernize Microsoft workloads, and they're helping the customer get that monolithic application to an entirely cloud native architecture on the other side of that journey. So that's just kind of an example of why and what I'm seeing with modernization today, with a specific kind of drill down on the Microsoft component of that.
Wow. So a lot of elements, a lot of concepts, and a lot of pathways that people can take. I mean, for businesses thinking about Windows modernization, but really not quite sure where to start, what advice would you give them?
Well, that's a great question. My advice would say, my knee-jerk reaction would be talk to SourceFuse. And I say that kind of tongue-in-cheek because it is really critical, and we see the most success when a customer engages with an AWS consulting partner. And there's a number of reasons for that, right? So I think the one that kind of always pops into my mind first is skill set. So we have customers, thousands of customers that have made the move to public cloud infrastructure or to AWS EC2, right? So they've made that kind of lift and shift move. And they've got kind of that skill set. Maybe they've built a well-architected framework. Maybe they've optimized an EC2. They've done a lot of this great work, but most of those customers don't have somebody on staff that knows anything about Fargate or Glue or you name the AWS kind of more native service. That skill set probably isn't relevant or isn't rampant within that particular customer. And where should they go to get that? They should go to an APN consulting partner, because folks like SourceFuse have expertise on staff, folks that have done that already in other projects that they can bring to bear to those conversations. So I think that's probably my first one. And again, I'm a little biased because this is the world I work in. I am a channel person, if you will. So, but I do think that skill set and that expertise is so critical to helping customers get started on the right foot. The next thing that I would probably say on how to get started, and this is a trend that I think has been in place for a long time, and I think most customers get this at this point, and definitely consulting partners do as well, but the power of the assessment. The power of the assessment is super critical, because when a customer takes time to work with a third-party expert and really analyze their current state and understand how that current state might map to either their vision or solving a current pain, that is super critical. And what happens in most assessments with an AWS consulting partner is the partner helps kind of the customer understand the current state. They help them with a financial model that's usually quite current focused, and then transition to future state focused, which is probably one of the most difficult pieces and probably one of the most important on the modernization journey, because that customer, that without that financial analysis, that customer sometimes struggles or stalls. The AWS consulting partner also helps with architecture. So it's really hard for a customer, for you to, if you're a customer today and you look at your own architecture, you probably know it inside and out. But sometimes it's not super easy to look at your own current architecture and envision what the future state might look like, because you haven't really worked on the future state side of the equation. Whereas an AWS, a consulting partner like SourceFuse, they've done that time and time again, and they've made that transition. So they know kind of how it starts and how it ends, and some of the road bumps along the way. So I think it's super critical within that assessment to focus on current state and future state. And then finally, within an assessment, kind of the most, I would say not the most important thing, but probably the big hook at the end is that go forward proposal, which a partner like SourceFuse will provide a customer, which really helps the customer understand not as much the financial aspects of, hey, what's it cost me to run today and what's it cost me to run in the future? It's the, hey, what's it cost me to get from current state to future state, which is so important. And that's where some of the financial equation is critical, right? And I think that takes me to the next piece about where to start is when you work with an AWS consulting partner like a SourceFuse, what you also get access to is all the AWS partner programs. And some of those are subsidies, right? So if you think about, I got to go out and find somebody who's an expert to help me understand what I have, help me understand what I'm going to have, help me understand how I'm going to get there. And then, oh boy, this is going to cost me some money. Is there a way that I can work with AWS to maybe get a little bit of subsidy to help me on that journey? That's where a partner like SourceFuse can help the customer really kind of understand that as well, because SourceFuse has access to these programs with AWS, the migration assessment program, the Windows modernization program, the rapid Windows migration program, a lot of acronyms and programs, which the customers don't want to have to figure those types of things out. So a partner like SourceFuse can also help them with that kind of unraveling that complexity, if you will, as well. So I think that's kind of where I would recommend any customer kind of step back and think about, all that complexity and not having kind of gone through it before, and the value that like a SourceFuse can help with along that journey.
Yeah, thanks, Jason. And we've actually used the AWS Windows modernization programs quite a few times now with great success. So really good programs for us to work with as well. Excellent. So you are an expert in your field, I think that's safe to say. So what would you say the future holds for Windows workloads and modernization?
Well, I would say a couple different things on this. So if you think about, let's look at it from the perspective of what's still going on in the ecosystem. If you talk to Gartner, IDC, any analyst, they will tell you that there's still a significant amount of customer workloads that are on premises today. And those workloads that are running in, a colo down the street, data center out in the warehouse, or a server under your desk, those workloads, eventually those customers are going to want to move those to the cloud, right? So there's probably been, in the past, there are a lot of on-premises workloads that are still there for a number of different reasons. I know SourceFuse is an expert in the healthcare space. And, I think that's an industry that was a little late to kind of rapidly adopt, but now seems to be on this very rapid curve to get to cloud. So I think, that's an example of maybe an industry who's still got some on-premises applications. But what we see with all of those customers that have still investments on-prem is that they are modernizing to cloud. And so what I mean by that is that historically, and as you think of the early days of AWS and public cloud infrastructure, customers were exploring this, what we call The slang that we use is lift and shift, right? So I've got a Windows SQL server running in my data center down the street. It's probably running on VMware. I'm going to take that virtual machine. I'm just going to bring it up and pop it into AWS EC2, lift and shift, right? What we see now is those customers saying, I don't know if I really want to go through lift and shift because that's not my end game. My end game is cloud native architecture. And I've got this great DevOps team that's telling me, hey, I need to go to cloud native architecture and I use microservices and I need to use containers and Linux-based containers and those types of things. And so what we see is this growing trend of customers that are not following the lift and shift motion, but are more following the, hey, I've got this on-premise application and it's running Windows and SQL. When I'm done, I want to be running, Postgres and Linux, right? And so that moves. So we see that motion happening quite a bit. So I think that's one thing that will only accelerate. I also think as the tools to do that work and the expertise from folks like SourceFuse becomes more available, the pace of that modernize to cloud will only pick up. Building on that, though, we also see is this move of customers that have already gone through the lift and shift motion that are kind of in this mindset of, wow, I've already done the lift and shift motion. I know how to operate in the cloud very well. I understand security. I understand the shared responsibility model. I understand, how to put resources in place. I understand which components of my environment I might want to manage and which components of my environment might want SourceFuse to manage for me. Those customers that have kind of been there because they did that lift and shift motion are now incredibly poised to go down a modernization path because they've already gotten through a lot of those initial hurdles that customers struggle with around kind of cost modeling, getting a contract with AWS, getting a VPN set up, all these little things that we kind of roll our eyes about now because we're so far into the cloud. But 5-6 years ago, those were big stumbling blocks for some of those customers, and they've gone through all that. So now they're just kind of looking at all of these new cloud native services, if you will, that they can take advantage of, and they're incredibly excited about kind of going to those. The pace of that is really fast because they've already done a lot of that early stage work that they needed to do. So if you think about that momentum, on both sides, customers that are saying, hey, I need to get to cloud, now it's ready, my industry's ready, HIPAA's not a concern for me, or all those types of things that have kind of loosened up, and now they want to modernize the cloud. And you think about the thousands of customers that are already running EC2 that are now saying, hey, I'm ready to go do this. All I need is the right skill set or the right third-party expertise to plug in quickly and help me do it. The pace is only going to pick up. So I think it's going to be an exciting time for any customer who's exploring the idea of modernization, or any AWS consulting partner who's out there with this expertise that they can bring to bear to those customers. I think it's only going to be even more exciting in the near term here.
Yeah, well, it really sounds like we've got a lot of work and technology to look forward to. Well, thank you so much, Jason, for joining us today and sharing your fascinating insights with us.
Excellent. Thank you, Liz, and thank you to the SourceFuse team for having me. And I'm looking forward to seeing more of those Windows modernization deals with all the great customers that are going to tune in.
Yeah, thank you. So all that remains is for me to say thanks for watching today, and join us again soon for our next Talking Out Cloud with SourceFuse.